All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. Sorry, we're running a few minutes behind. It is 2:35 p.m. on this 13th of August. And this is the AMATS Technical Advisory Committee, so hopefully everybody is in the right place. So first up is roll call. I always forget to do roll call.
I know, Mr. Louds.
You got it?
Here, Mr. Morgan.
Hello.
Mr. Hughes.
Present.
Mr. Hanson.
Here.
Mr. Weaver.
Here.
Mr. Hassan. Ms. Witt. Here. Ms. Walsh. Here. Mr. Morris.
Here.
Ms. Howe. Here. Holy cow, I think this is the most people I've seen here. We definitely have quorum.
I can leave.
I know. I know, but Kurt's not here. That's okay. I can read the public involvement announcements. As always, all AMATS meetings are public meetings and public involvement is encouraged. So first, staff or whoever's going to do the presentation will do the presentation. It'll be open to committee comments and questions, and we will open it to public comment before it comes back to the committee either for decision or moving on to the next. So, yes, please be involved. All right, first item before us is the approval of the agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Moved by Mr. Morris, seconded by Ms. Howe. Are there any opposed? None. We are moved. The agenda is approved. Next before us are the meeting minutes from July 9th, this last month. Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Ms. Hall, seconded by Mr. Martin. Or did you second it? Or Mr. Louds? Are there any opposed to approving the minutes? Hearing none, they are approved. Thank you for keeping us up to date. Greatly appreciate it. Moving right along. First item for us, business item. Item A is the air quality conformity to the MPP.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you for this item. You have a copy of the public review draft, air quality conformity determination for the M10 2035 MPP. And you also have a copy of the resolution from the AMATS Air Quality Advisory Committee. Basically, recommending that AMATS advise the policy committee to adopt the air quality conformity determination for and Mr. Morris or Ms. Schleifia, Ann Schleifia is going to present.
I'm sorry, I don't believe we're going to do a clarification to do with this particular topic.
But you're here to answer any questions? you
Yes,
have?
but we can
Okay.
help you with that. Also, John Lux is here from the committee for other questions having to do with it.
We did have two comments from the public on the determination. To my knowledge, we have never had any comments on the air quality conformity determination. So there were, I wondered if Ann or Steve could address those that could be sent to them.
Let's see. We had one that spoke to, that had to do with benzene, and I think if we have time to do the air quality trends presentation, that will be spoken to. And then there was another question that had to do with transit, and was it possible to have more subsidized transit trips? And I was hoping Mr. Hassan would speak to any limitations having to do with that.
I'm sorry, so from a commuter fixed route standpoint, or did they detail?
It wasn't much beyond that. Do you
It
have
actually had to
more
do
detail?
with providing bus passes. Here's the comment. It only summarizes the rate in People Mover, the difference from early years and the bus rates. That's one thing. Please consider to add scholarships or grants for the low-income families who do not qualify to receive bus passes from local agencies such as Cookville and Tribal Council TANF recipients.
So I don't think I can address that here and now. I do know that the municipalities looking into that as part of a greater shift in being able to accommodate such requests. But that's where we are currently. So there is a potential, it's just not something I can address right now.
And so, just for point of clarification, that wouldn't really have an impact, whether you can or can't doesn't have an impact on the air quality conformity determination.
No, this was
Just
just,
to make that clear.
Are there any questions on the air quality conformity from the committee?
Just one comment. Just planning and probably the committee sort of this on, or this now we're in the stage where we're limited maintenance areas for both PM10 and carbon monoxide. We used to have to do an emissions budget by regulation, where we'd have to go through a modeling process to show that the transportation emissions from the transportation network were under our budget. We're now that we're a limited maintenance plan, and then basically we qualified on the basis of having been well below both the carbon monoxide and PM10 standard. No longer required to do that. And basically the requirement is now to show that the air quality concentrations that we're measuring are still meet this criteria of being well below the standard. And secondly, that we're still implementing all the transportation control measures that we have to do as part of our state implementation plan. So when we've done that, that's what the conformity determination essentially speaks to. And as Ann mentioned, the Air Quality Advisory Committee endorsed that.
Madam Chair, speak quickly to, so, in terms of the resolution passed by Air Quality the other day, the committee felt very confident in the work of Ms. Shlabia and the Department of Health and Human Services. So, there was a little bit of discussion in terms of some, future items that certain members would like to see, but for the most part, we're very confident in the resolution. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any other questions or comments on the air quality?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to clarify, this is the same document that this body referred to the policy committee earlier, and there have been no changes.
So we already,
You've already seen it.
hold on, have we already recommended it for approval or no? We're doing
No,
that, that's today
yes.
with, and I guess this is my question before we bring it over. So are we doing them individually or is the recommendation to do them together?
It's whatever you just want to do, but they are related.
Okay.
You have to do the quality conformity
First, that's what I thought, that's why I was on the agenda. That's what I thought, I was just making sure. All right, are there any questions or comments about the air quality conformity from the public at this time? Try to quietly count down time in my head. Going once, going twice. All right, hearing none, the air quality conformity is presented to the committee for decision.
Move to approve the air quality determination for the Interim 2035 MTP to the policy committee for final approval.
Second. I know. All right, I heard Ms. Walter second, exactly. Are there any opposed to the motion before us? Hearing none, we are so moved. We recommend to the policy committee approval of the air quality conformity. All right, the next item is the interim MCP adoption.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's item. For this item, you have a memo and a supplemental memo. And you have the public review draft and the comment summary and the policy committee resolution that the policy committee has. So the memo basically outlines the process that's happened since we last directed staff to have a public hearing where the public had an opportunity to have their comments recorded. So that meeting was held, and it was on July 21st. It was very well attended. There were like 63 people present, and I believe it was 40 people testified. And overall, we also advertised the document on Twitter, Facebook, on the AMATS webpage. We used the email system, and we've had comments from over 101 individuals making comments on several different issues. And that's what the summary is about. The summary gives you a rundown. We can go through it if you like. We spent a lot of time putting this together for you. We wanted to be faithful to all of the rich comment that we received at the public hearing. People really appreciate the opportunity to be heard and listened to. And so,
If we ask a question,
Yes.
Chair, Vivian, if, having been involved in public development for a long time, 61 people showing up at a meeting is pretty impressive. Do you think it was the effectiveness of the AMATS' outreach, or were there other, I understood that there were other invitations that were going out with
yes, and
a different focus than the NTP
there were
extension?
one of the legislators area shared the information, and also Citizens for Responsible Development, and Lois Epstein also took some responsibility for that, so that helped get people out.
Now, it seems something that was advertising it as a public hearing specifically within that extension.
There was some misinformation that was shared with the public, but that's okay. They came, and it was good.
I can speak to it also.
Lois did bring pizza also.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I didn't know about that.
So,
Jamie?
No, did you have something like that?
Well, I was just going to say, some of the misinformation, we sent out information directly to the community councils, and there was some liberty taken with some of the emails that were produced, and it was kind of one of those all publicity is good publicity in those situations. So we also had quite a bit of news coverage at the event. So
that is true, yes. So the summary, most of the comments were email comments, and then the second most common was people in public testimony. And it breaks down who testified, and the stanzas are on page 3. By far, most of the people who were leaving comments had to do with opposing UMED and opposing Nickon Crossing and other. There was support expressed for both projects, and we did have some comments on our public process. The fact that people were concerned that they might be invited to testify, but not really have any real change in the document. But Mr. Lyon explained that we need to get this approved by the end of the year so that we will not lose money. And I trust they understood that. So, but the point is too, we want to keep this, all of this public comment is going to be used as input for the 2014. It's not going to be lost. It's not. Use it for that purpose. So we had action items requested by category on page 4. Most of the publishing were to either delete or just highlight items that you had done. And then there was a whole category of other issues. And then the third most common was to delete or highlight items being committed on council. We did get some comments on bicycle pedestrian facilities and support for several projects, including the Spinard Road project, and a few other miscellaneous topics. So Appendix A pulls out the detail of the summary, and we captured the stance. The project was, like, for example, on page 6, the project was the UMED project. The stance first was oppose UMED, and then the bolded topics are the issue areas. And then we spent a great deal of time going through people's comments to make sure that we captured all of them. A lot of them are very similar, but we wanted to keep the uniqueness of the comments so that you could see the breadth of what people's concerns were. And this will be used for for the 2040 MTP. The second memo has to do with, the supplemental memo has to do with editorial comments that were suggested by the Kinnicon Crossing team. And the three that are there, staff agrees with these edits, and to us, they're just administrative edits. We would like to make those in the draft that goes forward to the policy committee if you choose to do that today. And also in your packet, you have a resolution in the policy committee regarding the Kinnicon Crossing project. And I know that Mr. Lyon emailed that to you, but I just wanted to make sure that you can too for your discussion. So our goal is to get this, if you were blessing, to get this approved this month, so that we can send it forward to the FHWA and FDA. And that could take a couple of months to get for the air quality conformity determination. And the goal is to have the RFP for the 2040 MTP to purchasing by the end of this month. And we're trying our best to get that done.
Any questions or comments from the committee? Any questions? No? Nope. No? All right, then, are there any questions or comments from the public at this time on this item, on the interim MTP 2035, correct? Interim 2035 MTP. I know, I feel like I need a little I'm sure there's an app for that. I can get sent. Exactly. All right. No hearing, no questions from the public. Committee matter now lies with the committee.
So what's the action being sought by staff?
Action is at the bottom of the recommend the policy committee approval.
With the edits suggested in the supplemental memo.
Yes.
I make motion to that end.
All right. Moved by Mr. Lau, seconded by Ms. Howe. Are there any opposed to that motion?
I'd like to offer just a simple amendment, sort of cleaning up the bottom ones. On page 1-3, I think there's a little mistake where on the paragraph it's all uniformly. Very last sentence, I think I would like to amend the last three lines. It says because no additional air quality monitoring data has become available in 2014. That's no longer true. I think we forgot to, at one point that was true, but we did add 2014 data. So those just strike those last 3 lines.
So starting with because and then in 2014. Period after tip.
So that what you're recommending is putting a period after tip and
Right,
deleting
just strike the last
rest of
3 lines, yes.
Strike the last 3 lines. Okay, do you have any problems with that friendly amendment? No? All right, are there any opposed to the motion with friendly amendment?
Thanks, staff, and the consultant team working that put this together, and a lot of good work consolidating in one place, and hopefully this will allow you to get it closer. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you. It was very easy to review, I'll say that. Yes, the document was very, very easy to follow. At least I pulled that and the PPP. I know we don't have PPP before us yet, but that was also very easy to follow. That was very well done. All right. Are there any other business items or? No. All right. Just making sure. All right, so next before us are the information reports. First up, we all got one, right? We have the transportation model update. And what's there a handout for that?
It's just a copy of the slides.
Okay, all right. So we are going to have a presentation?
Yes, you will. It's
Okay.
up right behind you.
right.
My name is Teresa Brewer. I'm Senior Transportation Planner with AMATS. I'd like to introduce Joel Friedman. Some of you met him earlier today for the Model Development 101. He has over 20 years worth of modeling experience, several academic publications with the Transportation Research Board, and has taught nationally at the National Highway Institute on modeling. And today he'll provide an updated schedule on where we're at with the travel demand model update, some of the land use data inputs that we're working on, and future tasks. And for those of you here for the model users group meeting, after Joel makes this presentation, we'll break and go into the little glass room near planning. Thank you.
Thanks, Reese. Okay, so I'm going to keep this presentation short, unlike the previous presentation, and just cover where we're at with the model development schedule and the activities that we've been working on over the last couple of months, and sort of where we're headed over the next month or two with the model development project. This is the updated schedule after we amended the contract a few months ago due to change of scope. You can see that a lot of the tasks are complete here. I'm not going to go through each one, but I'll talk about the ones that are ongoing. Our model coordination task involves outreach like this and other kinds of outreach activities. The model usage group that's meeting later today, and that's ongoing throughout the life of the project. We are just now starting to update model components, so we have processed all of our survey data, and we're starting to compare that survey data to the existing model and specifying the enhancements that we're going to make to the model for the next plan update. And that covers the next couple of tasks: update model components and specify, estimate, and calibrate. We have a freight model that's currently being developed based on ATRI data, which is GPS traces and trucks. And we expect that work will be substantially complete by the end of the month. We're working on enhancing the model to deal with active transportation, specifically walk and bike modes. That work is ongoing, and it's really more or less part of the updating of the entire model system. Overall, the model estimation, calibration, and validation, we're hoping to conclude by the end of September. So we're really in the thick of it right now. And then we'll be working on validating the model, which is after the model's been implemented, comparing it to traffic counts and transit boardings, and making whatever adjustments are necessary to better match that data, as well as doing sensitivity testing of the model. So changing key inputs to the model system and making sure it behaves reasonably to those changes. And we're targeting the end of October for that. And then the last 2 months of the project will be documentation and training staff and users of the model and other stakeholders.
So what's the difference between green and blue?
Nothing, just to keep keep
So you can align it.
the lines separate. Yeah. Arbitrary. Okay. So a few things that we've been working on lately. Our base land use data is substantially complete, base year land use data. We are doing a little bit more work in collecting some auxiliary data items like a district layer and school districts and other things that we can use to better calibrate the models. We have reviewed land use allocations for the Matsu borough with Matsu staff, and we've documented the meeting minutes, and I think they might be available for review. We have finished the population and employment control totals that will be used for future years, and we are working on allocating those control totals to TAZs. We were waiting for a while for a buildable lands inventory before that work could proceed, but now that we have it, we're working through that process. It should be done by the end of the month. And I should note that we've added a sensitivity test to our validation task, which includes testing more aggressive growth forecast for Matsu Borough through the model system to see what impacts it has on transportation demand. In terms of survey data, we've done a lot of survey data processing over the last month in terms of cleaning the data and comparing it to the model. We've compiled a substantial number of traffic counts so far, and we're sort of still finalizing the traffic count database. We should have that done within the next couple of weeks here. We've also analyzed the Bluetooth survey data that we collected on the Seaward Highway and documented that data and some preliminary findings from the data. And we'll be using that a lot more when we get to model validation. So the current tasks that we're working on, future land use data, by the end of the month, we should have that done. Analyzing the survey data, comparing it to the model, and recommending enhancements, and then implementing those enhancements. Finalizing the traffic count database for validation, and the commercial vehicle model development. Those are all ongoing tasks that should be completed pretty soon here. Okay, that's my presentation. Short. Any questions? Yeah.
So how long are you with us? Are you retained through the whole process when we come up with different scenarios? Does your contract include that or not?
RSG's contract ends at the end of the model development project, which is end of November. So I would be happy to work on an ongoing basis, as long as there's a contracting mechanism to do so. Yes.
I'm wondering a little bit about how you're tracking or keeping track of the TAZ allocations.
State your name.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brian Hill, EDC Engineers. I'm wondering about how you're tracking the TAZ allocations, because I know with the previous models, it was a little bit hard to define how those TAZ allocations were separated and how that was documented.
Okay. Well, John's actually done a lot of the base year work already.
Okay.
And has written a memo describing the allocation process, which we can share with the public once it has all the official reviews.
Okay.
So that would be one source. Obviously, you could compare the existing allocations to the old ones to compare. And I imagine a similar memo will be written for the future year allocation process as well. So, John, anything to add to that, or?
I'm not sure I understand the question exactly. There's a documentation for it that will hopefully explain how it was arrived at.
I guess have some source for the AMATS staff to look back at in future years to say, like, as they see changes occurred, and say, okay, well, these are the allocations, these are the boundaries, and these are the numbers.
So you're saying how well we forecasted? Do we have a way to evaluate that?
Sure, and a way to clearly document that, so that could be used for future progress, sort of analysis by the AMATS staff.
Mm-hmm. That's not part of our contract, but
Okay.
I think that's a good idea, though. I mean, yeah, it's a good idea to always, I think, evaluate and calibrate your models for
Yeah.
land use allocation. So I would recommend that to AMAT staff.
But I think the documentation would be useful to understand how it was done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so if it's done again in 2 or 3 years, there will
Absolutely.
be, methodology available.
But we're obviously not going to be 100% accurate, so. But at least you did
Just so I can be clear about what the end product is and the handover, is the intent at the end of the year, by the end of the year, that the AMAT staff would be handed basically a model that has been updated to reflect, I think it's 2013 base year, calibrated and validated for 2013, and then also has the forecasted land use allocations for all associated economic, for household employment.
Correct. So you could run the model using existing plus committed projects in the future year transportation network and future year population and employment forecasts. And then as you go through the plan analyses for the next plan, the 2040 plan, you would have to, obviously implement those transportation projects in the network and test them. That is not part of the current project. Any other questions?
Gary Capstan with Kittleson and Associates. So the base 2040 network is not part of the modeling, or is
It
part
is
of
part of it.
Okay, I just wanted clarification.
Yes.
I think that's what you were asking.
Well,
too.
yeah, and it's because it's something that,
So it's, to expand on it, it's the base system that's in the 2035 plan, correct?
You will get a base year network that reflects all of the projects that were built in 2013 and demand inputs, which are the population and employment
Right.
for 2013. And that model system will be calibrated and validated to 2013 data.
Right.
And then you'll also have a future year version of the model that could be run for the future.
But the system model is based upon the 2035 system?
The future year
Yeah.
network would include existing plus committed projects that were part of the last RTP, the most recent RTP. Okay.
I'm not sure this is a question for you or staff. So is the plan to hire another consultant to run the, or are we going to have to, staff?
when the RFP is let by Vivian, there'll be further details on that, but staff obviously will assist in that effort, and then also the RFP will probably have coordination with whoever the selected bidder is. Also, we always usually put a little bit of money aside for technical assistance.
So we'll have a consultant modeler on board for the MTP, or
To some certain extent.
Okay.
Will staff coordinate with the selected bidder, that run the model.
Okay, so when we send out an RFP, excuse me, for the update, that contract will include the modeling required for the NTP update, correct?
Vivian is busy writing the model. Staff will help the selected bidder with technical resources and assist in the modeling. But the contractor, and I haven't seen the draft RFP for quite a long time, so I'm not exactly sure what the language is in it. And I'm a little hesitant to discuss a future RFP in a public setting since it's not been released yet.
Certainly.
So, but the goal is to have staff assist in that, staff help run the model in coordination with the selected bidder.
I have a lot of questions, but it's probably worth a follow-up discussion. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Any other questions or comments from the public? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we have a presentation. Do we have a presentation for the next item as well, the update? Aaron?
David Post will be giving the presentation.
Okay.
I'm Dave Post. I'm the Surface Transportation Planning Manager for Central Michigan. A few years back, I was in Aaron's position as the AMATS coordinator, the liaison between DOT and the AMATS here, so it's kind of nice to be back. And I'm going to talk to you about the STIP. The STIP, of course, is where AMATS
Dave, can I have you pause?
Sure.
Sorry, just on that. I know you said that the model user group is actually going to reconvene in room 170, correct? So if anybody who's here for the model user group, if you want to exit, that way we're not completely interrupting Dave while he's giving the presentation, sorry. Figured, I heard some rustling, it's an opportunity to head out and then we'll continue on.
So AMATS allocation is actually included within the STIP itself, and on the first page of the handouts that I provided to the group up here earlier today, you'll see at the top of that page the CPE allocation to AMATS. so that's one of the reasons why this new state transportation improvement program is significant to AMATS. Oops, how do I do this? Okay. A lot of this new STIP is really guided by the policies that are in MAP 21. MAP 21 itself was really focused on the policy aspect of the decision-making process, less so on the funding side, other than the fact that the funding within the program was directed largely by the policies and the focus on the national highway system. It kind of kicked the can down the road on the whole issue of how do we keep the highway trust fund alive and solvent. As many of you know, it's been going insolvent basically on a near annual basis with the need for occasional appropriations of general fund monies from Congress. So the policy really has been to focus on the NHS in MAP 21. There are specific performance measures for pavement, safety, freight mobility, congestion, bridges, and unlike some of our other transportation authorization bills in the past where this guidance is in the form of encouragement and should, this time it really is has some teeth to it. If we don't meet these performance measures, there's the potential for our more limited amount of flexible funding to be directed towards certain areas to meet those performance measures. And if we continue to go ahead and miss those performance measures, then there's the potential for a higher state match. So there really is kind of a focus from the federal government on the national highway system and specifically on some of these performance measures. And it's reflected in the funding. The two big forms of funding are STP, the Surface Transportation Program, and NHPP, the National Highway Priority Program, which used to be known as the NHS. $280 million to NHS, as opposed to $115 million to basically all other roads. And within the Surface Transportation Program, we fund the Alaska Highway System, which in some of the other areas of the state, are some more significant roads kind of between, if you will, just local and collector level roads and the National Highway System. And then the Community Transportation Program, there's a number of required measures that come out of the STP. Our track program had been funded by STP as well. So that $115 million is stretched kind of far and wide. And if you compare the $280 million, that's out of the combined STP and NHPP, you're looking at about 70% of the funding directed towards the NHS. And of course, the Highway Safety Improvement Program, a lot of those projects are actually focused on where the traffic, the speeds are, and a lot of that is focused on the Highway Safety Improvement Program too. So you're looking at a significant focus on the NHS within this STIP. This STIP is use it or lose it, and it's worth knowing that really plays into some of our strategies that I'll go into later on. Now, MAP 21 not only is focusing the funding on the NHS, they did go ahead and greatly expand the NHS. This was our NHS a few years back before MAP 21 was adopted. MAP 21 went ahead and said that basically all principal arterials would be classified as NHS too. So a lot more funding to that program, but then a lot more roads in that program, certainly in Anchorage as well. The greatest changes, in Alaska were really in the Matsu and Anchorage. So looking for the time being at the Surface Transportation Program, which is that smaller $115 million pot of money that has the greatest amount of flexibility that can be spent, really on virtually anything that, the FHWA allows for road projects. There's about, I'm sorry, the print is really dark there, but about $20 million, $20.3 million of the obligated monies are anticipated to be directed towards those urban areas that are 200,000 or greater. And of course, Anchorage is the only urban area in the state that's 200,000 or greater. So that's clearly only eligible to go to Anchorage. Now, this is the same pot of money that in the past had funded the CTP portion of the AMATS allocation, when you got 23 million, I think it's $23,734,901. Let's not forget that last $1. But the decision was, since the allocation of 20.3 million is pretty close there is a decision just to go ahead and keep the AMATS allocation basically the same as the 2015 levels. Same with CMAQ. You're looking at basically $1.2 million in CMAQ funds, same as you had received in 2015. And that's for the entire 2016, 17, 18, and 19 period of the STIP. Some of the programming considerations we were looking at, if you look at the STIP closely, you'll notice that there's a lot of illustrative funding shown in there. And there is a rationale for that illustrative funding. It's not imaginary funding. We really did try and go ahead and try and determine how to set that level of illustrative funding. And it's based in part upon the notion that we've had quite a bit of monies that, when a project is closed out, are freed up. So when we go out to get ready to advertise a project, we have to go ahead and set aside the amount of money that we estimate that project's going to cost, and then go out to bid. And oftentimes the bids, come in less. In the distant past, for many years, they were coming in oftentimes well in excess of our estimates. There was a period of time when our engineers were consistently the low bidders. This is much better. Oftentimes they're coming in less. We've had reductions in the price of oil, and that certainly impacted some of our bid prices. So that leftover that is remaining when we actually get the closing of the project, that's freed up whenever we actually go through the formal process of closing that project. That money has to be reutilized within the year that it's freed, or else it goes back to the Highway Trust Fund. So because of that, we need to basically be able to go ahead and program more than the total allocation that the state receives, so that we're able to go ahead and take those monies and throw those at a different project that same year. Once again, it's about $100 million annually if you factor in things like August redistribution, which is kind of a similar concept that's happening on a national level, where there's additional monies coming into this state. This is not a surprise to the folks here, but occasionally projects are not obligated in the year that they were programmed. Occasionally we get hiccups during the right-of-way process or permitting process, and we're not able to go ahead and move forward with the project in a year that we anticipated being able to utilize that money. So because of that, and because Project A had programmed a certain amount of funding, but that's not going to be utilized, and since it's use it or lose it funding, we need to have another project in the wings that's able to go ahead and move forward with that funding that's already shown in the STIP as being eligible to receive those monies. And so that's why, given that it's about 30% on an annual basis of our total of $470 million, we're looking at about $150 million from that mental exercise to be able to program again. A total of about 300 million illustrative funding is programmed in this STIP based upon those two factors there. So illustrative funding, it's not imaginary. It's something that we reasonably anticipate being able to go ahead and move forward with. We do have a new project view map. If you want to see, this is helpful in a way because it shows on a statewide basis where you see, and certainly in Central Region, which we focused on, where you see the investment. If you were to connect the dots there, which represent the various projects, you'd have our national highway system, for the most part. It gets a little bit confusing, of course, in Anchorage, but you can definitely see where the level of investment is. But there is, for those that want to, there's a new map-based viewer that we have that kind of shows all the projects in the STIP. But you guys have a handout for the ones that are specific to Anchorage. And this is my last slide. I do want to take a moment. We talked about the federal capital side of the house. of course, the state side of the house is a very different picture for M&O. Right now, we're facing some significant issues in M&O. About a 15% reduction in what Central Region is receiving for highways and aviation. And so we're having to go ahead and do a little bit of triage and try and figure out how we're going to go ahead and manage these sometimes significant new expenses that we're oftentimes building. And as an exercise in that, some of our M&O staff are looking at how it is that we'll be prioritizing winter and to some extent summer construction as well. Really, the focus is likely to be, much as it is in the federal side of the house, our focus for M&O is likely to be kind of on the regional connectivity and the NHS and arterials and such. It's really those lower functional class, oftentimes lower volume roads that are really going to go ahead and see, I think, potentially more significant reductions in the maintenance. But that was just a little segue there. You do have the handout that shows all the projects that are within the municipality of Anchorage. The last page happens to show the funding codes there, which sometimes can get a little bit confusing, and the phasing as well. And I guess with that, that's all I have for you guys. Comments are due August 27th, and I think we were planning on going ahead and having a little bit more detailed meeting with some community staff at a later date. But, that's it. Thank you.
These are comments are due August 27th.
27th.
What's the public involvement like for the steps? Is it similar to what we do for the tip, or I'm familiar with this, so just wondering.
Well,
And is there any way that we can help
sometimes
spread the word?
Yeah, so sometimes the formal public involvement through the kind of the formal means isn't as STIPs somehow haven't risen to quite the level of excitement, that other things have, and so we have had a public meeting actually this past Monday, but what we're trying to do more so is understanding that there's select groups, and oftentimes it's the local government staff that have more of an interest in the local governments that are probably more likely during comment time. We've been actually going out one-on-one and kind of meeting with the local government. I think, as a matter of fact, there's a meeting that's coming up on Monday with some of the folks in here with the game as well. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments in the committee?
Any questions or comments from the public? Thank you, Dave. So, just a question. I know the audit report is printed up for us. Is there a presentation or anything for the air quality codes?
Yes.
Are you going to use the projector?
Please, unless it's.
Is it a?
I know that we already approved the agenda, but is anybody opposed to flip-flopping those two, so we just kind of stay in our seats and do the final?
Actually, if I could ask that Aaron be able to go, because he's wanting to get over, they're having a workshop right now on the model,
Oh, okay.
and he really wanted to be there, so if we could actually just be, we can still sit there.
I know. I didn't grab it though.
Okay.
I don't have my audit report.
Okay, it'll be quick.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I just didn't want to have to move. Yeah.
Wait until I move it. It's spoiled. I had to stand up in front of you guys for a while. I've been doing the reports, so. Okay, my name is Aaron O'Bannon. I'm the AMATS Transportation Planner for the Department of Transportation. And before you, you have third quarter already, OB report. So the first thing is how are we doing overall? If you turn to the very last page, we're required to be within plus or minus 5%. And if you notice at the big red section, we are at 7%. So we're actually a little over, about 1.7 million. And the majority of that is due to, on the front page, you'll see under the previously programmed roadway projects utilizing FY14 funding and the obligations. So we had a couple of projects, Dowling Road West Extension Phase 2 and Eagle River Rehab that have a couple of construction overruns. So as we reported multiple times during these op reports, we're hoping to get the obligations to cover those overruns, and if we can't get enough of the obligations, the AMATS allocation will have to be used to cover them. So right now, we are not expecting too many more de-obligations to be hitting before the end of the fiscal year. So before you, we will have to bring back some kind of updated TIP amendment. And one of the ways that we will help kind of adjust the allocation to balance the program and cover those construction overruns is with the Abbott Road Rehabilitation Project. You'll notice that we have $6 million programmed into the, little over $6 million programmed into the TIP with an AC from 16 into 15. We'll have to adjust those numbers to help cover the construction overruns and maybe pull more AC from 16 and kind of balance the program overall. So that'll be something that as we move forward into Q4, I'll be looking at and working with Craig and kind of bringing something back to you guys at a future TAC meeting. I'm not sure which one yet. We'll see how things go. Yeah, so, well, I'm trying to keep these on track, so unfortunately this is a month late, so hopefully the next one won't be a month late. Another thing.
Too late at this point.
Surprise. Another thing of note is on the front page, C Street Ocean Dock Road Access Ramp Reconnaissance Study. We show that we anticipate obligations. We still have a little bit of time left. We're kind of not sure if we're going to be able to get that obligated in time, so it's just a heads up that if, as we're moving forward into Q4, we may actually have to move that out into 16 to give it the diligence it requires. We have so many projects going on right now that we don't want to just kind of push it through without actually, focusing
Even
on
do the
it.
stink eye over here.
I'm trying to ignore the stink eye. So other than that, unless I can see laughter from the other corner as well, we're doing fairly well on getting all of our obligations done. Actually, in fact, everything. I've been pushing very hard to get it done, and we've done very well. One thing of note on page 2, or another thing, is the bike plan implementation project. We've been doing fairly well with that, and we're actually going to be obligating more funds than we had programmed into the TIP for that. So we'll have to cover that as well. So we do care about non-motorized transportation as well. And I think that's it. Are there any questions, comments, concerns?
Sad to see the ramp delays, really. I'm on it every day. So lots of trucks are on it too.
I was very, very scared about standing up in front of this group and telling them we'd have to possibly delay that project because I figured you would leap over the table at me. So.
So the recon, that's for the recon study?
Yes, it will be.
Okay. Any questions or comments for Aaron? Any questions or comments from the public? Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Yes, I will gather your stuff and Teresa's stuff and we'll take care of everything. Would you mind hitting the lights on the way out? Thank you.
Might as well.
And bring the popcorn. Exactly. And last we have the air quality track report. Miss Flavia, yes, she's over here. Yes.
Thank you for this opportunity. We'd like to run through a few things. This is, try to keep this abbreviated as much as possible. Some updates as far as the program, the pollutants, where we're monitoring and the like. I'm Ann Flavia. I'm the air quality program is over at the Department of Health, so it's municipal. You may have met, or you may recall Matt Stitchick, who was environmental engineer last year, likely doing the presentation. He's left the group, and now we are 2 or 1.75 or such. So anyway, we're a little slower than it used to be. Let's see, so we'll consider who has responsibilities, what pollutants we're monitoring, and trends and measures that we're taking having to do with the program. So with the loss of that position, ADEC has taken up some responsibilities. We're still doing monitoring and so on, but they've taken ownership of our ownership and payments for our site leases for the monitoring sites and ownership of equipment. They still do Title V permitting and so on. DRDOS network, that began with some funds that we had, some grant funds, but now they've taken over payments and running that network. So that network enables data quality to be inspected well and submitted to EPA. DEC tends to interface with EPA on things like exceptional events and monitoring plans and so on. So we do air quality complaints and daily forecasts, planning and so on, and then we're the phase when there are health advisories and so on locally. So enforcement, we have about, mid-year we had about 46 complaints, many related to dust, some burning in neighborhoods, and a bit of industrial. We have, this is where our funding breaks, how our funding breaks down. We have some general funds from MOA, EPA. We have received AMATS money for, in several different categories, the largest of which is monitoring. And then we receive a good bit for air quality awareness from CMAC. We have a tiny bit left from some air toxics study that we did. So as far as pollutants, we've monitored lately. We have those that are considered the NOx pollutants, those with a health-based standard that are reviewed occasionally and against current studies to see if the levels and so on are appropriate. So that would be pretty much these here. And then I wanted to touch on air toxics too. Actually, we consider that fairly good news as far as air quality in town is concerned. The form of the standard is something that is, we have to always keep in mind as far as what level constitutes an exceedance, how many of those exceedances can occur before it's considered a violation. Averaging times vary according to the pollutant, our attainment status and so on. So it's all things that we have to keep in mind, and it impacts, obviously, as you know, our transportation planning and so on. As far as our air toxics, that would be things like volatile organic compounds, components of gasoline and so on. And then what my professor used to refer to as tetramethyl death, the harmful polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, bad stuff. So we had a study that was done in 2008, 2009. That was a baseline, and then EPA had regulated gasoline, reduced the content of gasoline, benzene specifically, that could be allowed in gasoline. And so afterwards, we repeated the study. It looked at both the gasoline itself and then also at this garden neighborhood, also the VOCs in the air there. And so what we found after this reduction in benzene in the gasoline was that we had a real benefit as far as the air was concerned, that benzene in the air dropped by about half. So this was good for Anchorage because we started off with really a good deal of benzene in our gasoline, probably 4% by volume. And so now it's down to 1.3%, and our air is much better. So this is our outdoor air. We also have quite a bit of the way our houses are built and so on. When we park inside our garages, a lot of that pollution actually gets spread throughout the house. And so this was really some good news. So we're, as far as the 2012 study, we're still in the process of writing that up and hope to go ahead and publish that in an open source. And EPA has asked us to go and present that to some of their folks. So it's a success story I'm pleased to talk about. In '93, when I came on, I was doing an indoor air study for this. So it's taken quite a bit of time, but it's come to be. We had a lead study at Merrill Field of lead. Of course, lead was phased as an additive, phased out of gasoline years ago, but it's still in piston aircraft gas, avgas. And so EPA chose Anchorage as one of 15 cities to do this study. And so it was a year long. We're right in the middle of Merrill Field. And one thing that prompted this was that the levels, the limits on lead ambient levels dropped to like a tenth of what they used to be. And so it became really urgent to get a sense of where we were. And so as far as the city's concerned, this was good. We were below half the standard. So as far as lead is concerned, we think we're good. It stands to be seen where EPA wants to go with this. If anyone's interested, I can forward you information having to do with that. So as far as other things are concerned, ozone, we did test that recently and found we're far below the standard. SOx and NOx, not because of our industry and so on, not a concern here either. So we'll talk about the three pollutants, carbon monoxide and the two sizes of particulate. Okay, so as far as these pollutants are concerned, it's PM10, PM2.5. They differ in. That's referring to the size difference between the two. So one is obviously larger than the other, but they have the natures of nature and the source are different between them. So when we think of the 2.5, the really fine particulate there, we think about sources like diesel exhaust and smoke and the like, and can even be liquid in nature. The PM10 tends to be larger, tends to also be more mineral and so on. So the health effects also, the PM10, think more of the lungs, the pulmonary. The 2.5 can even get down and start to enter the bloodstream, so it can even produce arrhythmias and so on. So different nature of the two. Of course, the 2.5 fraction is included in the PM10, but it is called out on its own. The 2.5 also interferes with visibility quite a bit. So as you recognize, we get some calls sometimes saying, the air looks horrendous. What do you mean good air quality? Well, it's really it doesn't take much 2.5 to make things look very poor as far as visibility is concerned. So the number of our sites has gone down perhaps since we spoke to you last time. We have a difference on Tudor Road, not far from here. The Allstate building across the road, we for years had a monitor atop that, and they asked us to leave because they were hoping to raise that building. And we're fortunate enough to get a new building, a new rooftop on, what do they call it, Joy Christian Center. So it's up near the new Starbucks that's closer to Tudor from here. And so it looks comparable. We did as well as we could to find a similar site. That's really Tudor was always our high impact site. Garden, we have carbon monoxide, PM2.5, PM10. And then out in Parkgate in Eagle River, we call it Parkgate because it's the Parkgate building on the old Glen, and that has particulate two sizes, but does not have carbon monoxide. These others are, Turnagain was really our higher of the two carbon monoxide sites, but the building changed hands and they didn't want to continue our lease. And then we closed, we were monitoring at DHHS, which is where we are, and the concentrations weren't such that we thought that would be valuable to continue. So again, there's our different pollutants. PM10 doesn't have an annual limit, but it does have a 24-hour, and 2.5 really has both. So our 2.5 isn't. We get a lot of complaints as far as it's concerned. Smoke from one neighbor bothering another, that sort of thing. But it's not. We're not Fairbanks,
Yeah,
Cindy.
you say not
Bless
like
her.
Fairbanks.
In Cindy's nightmares, they look like this. So anyway, as far as the two are concerned, the 24-hour limit and then the annual average, we're doing well. But this is something we always want to watch, because when wood-fired boilers, when we started having some of those located in town, they were creating a real issue for some people. And so we now have specs as far as they have to be EPA certified, that there's a property, a location, they have to be a certain limit from the property, the stacks have to be height relative to the neighbors and so on. So because they have the capacity to really impact the air, we've tried to head that off before there were many in Anchorage.
So the high number in 2014, is that the fires last May, or what was that?
I'm not certain what day that is, because sometimes also in the winter, we have, when mixing height, you have the mixing height drops, and the, wood smoke can accumulate, and then vehicles are cold. That's also, those sorts of things impact neighborhoods. So I'm not certain what day that is.
That's a 98th percentile, so that's actually a statistical number. I mean, it's based on a number of like 4 or 5 days. It's a 98th percentile concentration of 365 days.
It's still high.
It's
still high.
Yeah. Well, we did have those fires for a long time last May.
Those usually get taken out with exceptional events, because fires are natural instead of man-made, where this is wintertime, it's man-made burning from your home. So some of the fear is we've been watching is as natural gas prices rise, people may go to wood, which is very disconcerting, because we don't want to go like what Fairbanks is doing.
Fires of Mordor. Yeah, you'd say. Okay, and then we have, probably our biggest concern is our coarse particulate, or PM10. The conformity determination that you just looked at had to do with the Eagle River Limited Maintenance Area. So these 9 miles in Eagle River. And that really began, this area became problematic back in the 90s. It had quite a lot of unpaved roads, and that dust would impact that, and paving and wrapping treatment with recycled asphalt has really remedied quite a bit of that. And I believe at this point there are really no unpaved roads within that maintenance area. Another source that occurs sometime is the riverbanks in the valley. When we don't have snow in the winter or any time of the year, they're not covered. It can go ahead and, we have strong winds, it can go ahead and even be carried down to Anchorage. As Cindy mentioned, that's considered an exceptional event if the wind speed fits certain parameters. But it's really unpleasant when it hits town. It can be written off, but we have to, be warning the public and so on. And then there's things that are our fault. So this is kind of backlit a little bit, but it kind of shows what we see. You can see in the morning And that is, this was taken in March, so on a morning that's frozen where snow melt has run across the roadways and it's freezing, it's kind of dry and not adhering to other, to itself, then it can loft as the traffic comes on in the morning. And so that's something each year we have to deal with. And PM10 is tricky. It's not always spring. Sometimes when we have the melting, we frequently have melts in Rondi time, actually. We can. And so sometimes we've had high numbers at that time of year too. So it's something you have to keep an eye on constantly. And then, of course, we still have unpaved roads within Anchorage, and maybe more so in the fall they can impact us. But of course, the localized effects are pretty significant also.
Girdwood can get nasty.
Ma'am?
Girdwood can get nasty, but that.
Of course, a lot of people think that sweeping is the solution, and it's, to some degree it is, but it can be sort of problematic in the short term. After sweeping, it can kind of smear the particles on the road, and then when they dry and the traffic comes by, then they loft. And so what they've been doing, what the road maintenance state and Muni have been doing, is trying to treat it afterwards with magnesium chloride, which is a hygroscopic salt in a solution that they spray, or they can use as a onboard solution to sweep if temperatures are frozen. So that's, I can see some strange dark roads, not aliens. This is Tudor, near to where we are. That's been sprayed with some magnesium chloride as a means to keep the dust down and the material down.
Especially around that lawn.
Pardon?
Especially around that lawn.
Yes, that does. It does.
It all works.
Okay, so here's a little, this is our prior monitor and our new one. It just, we're thinking we've only gotten data from the new site since maybe May, and so we don't have a good sense of necessarily what the value is. And it would have been great to be able to run them against each other, and then we know that this is 20% less or so on, but we didn't have that luxury. So, but it is still on the same side of the road, and so we're trying to be conscientious as far as the siting is concerned. Okay, and as far as PM10 trends, now as far as the Eagle River is concerned, the limited maintenance area, things are looking pretty good. The parkgate would be the site over here. The parkgate is that Eagle River site. So problematic sometimes, but also some are exceptional events. The Tudor site has been a bit of a headache. As you see, those red are considered exceedances. Now, some of those, they're valid. They're not exceptional events. What saved us actually was that when they wanted the site down, actually that monitor, there wouldn't be a fourth exceedance, which would constitute a violation. So anyway, what I'm trying to communicate is the fact that that's PM10 is something that we have to be conscientious about, and one of the best ways we know is to keep a daily eye on it and call for mag chloride treatment if needed. From this year, from maybe late January through part of June, we had weekday messages to the street maintenance, the state and the city, and quite a few parties talking about what the forecast was for the day, how we came out the prior day, what would need treatment, and so on. Eagle River, the state was good. I don't believe they necessarily needed our direction. They kind of got a feel for when the old Glen there needed treatment. And of course, in Eagle River, it's so much of the traffic concentrates on that one road. It's very easy to treat that one stretch and sort of square town away. Not so much in Anchorage. So carbon monoxide early 80s, we violated as many as 50 days in a single year. Our sole carbon monoxide monitor now is in the garden site. It's in a neighborhood, Airport Heights neighborhood, south of Humana. And it's great in a certain way because we've been monitoring there so long that we've monitored carbon monoxide concurrently with air toxics and other pollutants, PM 2.5. So we have a kind of a nice idea how they track, which kind of gives hints to, what the source of this is. If it's automotive, if carbon monoxide is about 80% from automobiles, so, if we have a VOC or some other pollutant, we can say, and they sort of follow the same pattern, then we can assume that the sources might be similar.
Do you know that UAA is monitoring the air at the port?
Would you say that again?
UAA is monitoring the air at the port. Did you know that?
No. Did you know that, Steve?
We can talk about it offline, but there's a bunch of monitors on top of that in the building.
There were quite a few studies done in the late 90s in Anchorage involving DEC and MOA of emissions and all sorts of travel behaviors, and all of these feeding into a model and also into a air quality improvement plan. This that you can't necessarily read is composite of emissions from automobile testing, showing that the CO drops off as the vehicle warms. So that's a 10-minute duration there. And so that's kind of the basis of, we still do Plug-in 20 recommending the use of engine block heaters as a way to warm vehicle engines more quickly. This is our site at Garden. What we do still have there is a pollen monitor. We started pollen sampling years ago when we were, had some grant funds and purchased the equipment and the scope and had the training and so on. And this year we were hoping that someone else would assume it. They did not, and so that's something we've kept with, and we only do that, say maybe May through freeze up late September. But it's so valuable to the community, and no one stepped up. We just said, sure, we'll do that also. And so, anyway, so CO, as far as the trend is concerned, it has been going down very nicely. We were able to do away with the IM program just a few years ago. So in conclusion, PM10, probably the pollutant to watch. We are proposing new opacity regulations as for wood smoke, fireplaces, wood stoves, and so on like that, should as a means to sort of deal with complaints truthfully. And so that would impact 2.5. Right now, I believe the legal department is looking at that. We had quite a bit of input from the AMATS Air Quality Committee and also Health and Human Services Committee about that proposal. And so carbon monoxide watching looks really good as far as pollution is concerned at levels. Any questions? Thank you.
Are there any other committee comments at this time?
I'd just like to announce that the Central Region has a position that's advertised on Workplace Alaska for air and ambulance fire physician, named Derek Python. If you know anybody who might be interested, it's, I think it's advertised for another 2 weeks.
Any other comments from the good committee? Move to adjourn? Yeah, the next meeting is policy committee 2 weeks from today. Otherwise, we'll see you next month here.